that you know just what to say.
Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm Michael Shore along with Wes Clark. We are going to be here for the next 2 hours. Cenk will be back tomorrow, and we have a lot to cover today. We have more, serious news to talk about later. We have terrorism news. We have politics. We have healthcare. We have some, I would say, scintillating. Certainly, one guest who I know is going to raise hackles during the show. But I think we should lead off with something that we talked about yesterday. Richard Eskow and I were here yesterday, Wes, talking about, you've heard of the golfer Tiger Woods?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Well, and you've heard of the newsman Brit Hume?
I've heard of the newsman.
Well, we Brit Hume, and we'll hear this in just a second. Brit Hume was trying to do a sort of a come to Jesus to Tiger Woods. It sounded inadvertent, but now it seems more and more advertent as time goes on, in that he's talking about how Tiger, if he were not a Buddhist, and I think it's a presumption that he's a Buddhist. I don't know in fact that he is a Buddhist, but Hume is presuming he's a Buddhist. If he were a Christian, he could get forgiveness within the Christian religion, because so many Christians. That it's sort of licensed to sin if you're a Christian.
Oh,
it's like,
yeah, absolutely.
Come over here once you have sinned, and then you can just keep sinning because you can come back and get redemption for it. In any case, he went on Bill O'Reilly's television show, and JR, this is clip number 6. Let's listen. We're going to hear on the show what Hume said initially, then we'll talk about what he's saying to Bill O'Reilly. Clip 6.
Now, on Fox News Sunday, you got into a subject that was pretty interesting. It's non-political. It's a social embarrassment for Tiger Woods. And you said this about Mr. Woods. Roll the tape.
He's said to be a Buddhist. I don't think that faith offers the kind of forgiveness and redemption that is offered by the Christian faith. So my message to Tiger would be, Tiger, turn to the Christian faith, and you can make a total recovery and be a great example to the world.
Was that proselytizing?
I don't think so. I mean, look, Tiger Woods is somebody I've always rooted for as a golfer and as a man. I've greatly admired him over the years, and I always have said to people that it was the content of his character that made him, beyond his extraordinary golf skills, so admirable. Now we know that the content of his character was not what we thought it was. He is paying a frightful price for these revelations. My sense is that he has basically lost his family. And there's a lot of talk about the endorsements he's lost, but that pales, I suspect, in his mind with what he's lost otherwise. And my sense about Tiger is that he needs something that Christianity especially provides and gives and offers, and that is redemption and forgiveness. And I was really meaning to say in those comments yesterday more about Christianity than I was about anything else. I mentioned the Buddhism only because his mother is a Buddhist and he has apparently said that he is a Buddhist. I'm not sure how seriously he practices that. But I think that Jesus Christ offers Tiger Woods something that Tiger Woods badly needs.
Now, if he does go that route, then he would be accused of, remember in the Bill Clinton years when he got in trouble, he had the Bible and Jesse Jackson, and they were praying, and wouldn't Americans?
Yeah, that's true, Bill, and that wasn't the first time. Remember Chuck Colson, who was one of the leading lights of Watergate, if you will.
But he made a true conversion.
He did, and what I'm saying is, if Tiger Woods were to make a true conversion, we would know it. It would show through in his being, and he would know it above all, and he would feel the extraordinary blessing that would be, and it would shine because he is so prominent. It would be a shining light, and I think it would be a magnificent thing to witness.
Where to even begin?
Well, there's so much here, and I introduced this as a light story, and it is light because it's about golf, and there is so much else going on in the world right now that is not, in fact, light, as we all know. But as I listened to this more and more and more, it became so offensive to me to listen to it, because the way Hume is talking about this. First of all, the fact that Brit Hume can just say he can name 2 people, Bill Clinton, and when Bill Clinton held the Bible and he was with Jesse Jackson, every Christian Republican was skeptical of it. Yet, we can use it as an example when we want Tiger Woods, the golfer, to come out and do it and say the same thing.
Because it's not about, for Brit Hume, it's not about Tiger Woods. And first of all, you're starting off with the assumption that you can only be forgiven, through Christianity?
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, society can provide redemption. We can say, as a society, Tiger screwed up. He screwed up with something that we he owes us nothing. You know, Brit Hume says, I used to tell people that I liked, it wasn't what a good golfer he was, it was the content of his character. I think that is such a crock, because...
It's a total crock.
Yeah. I mean, all Tiger Woods was an unbelievable golfer who happened to be married to a beautiful woman and have 2 kids. I mean, so are many golfers, and so are many people. But I watched him because he was a golfer. I didn't watch the Masters because, well, this is a good husband.
Well,
it's also this, nice shot, by the way.
It's,
but he's a
it's
good
the
husband.
Republican desire for like an infantilized sexual existence, where anybody who's famous, they can only be good if they're not out getting it.
Right. Well, or anybody who's anything.
And to say, I mean, look, the thing going on with Tiger Woods when it comes to forgiveness or anything else, the only person who would need any apology from Tiger Woods is his wife.
Absolutely.
There's no God in between.
And that's
There's
the
no
only person with whom
nothing
he is,
else.
yeah, for whom he is embarrassed, and for where he has shame, and also the presumption on Brit Hume's part that he doesn't care about the money. He doesn't care. I agree with Brit Hume about that. I don't think he cares about losing the Accenture gig, but also the presumption that he has lost something so much more. And if you ask Tiger Woods, I'm sure that he is devastated. For all we know, and we don't know anything, he could have been tired of his life as a married man. Maybe that's what this did, and he was terrible about it, and whatever, what have you. But that's also a presumption that we could make.
And it's also not really any of Brit Hume's business.
No, nor is it any of our business. I mean, that's the thing. If you like golf, you should watch this guy play golf.
Because he's a good golfer.
He's unbelievable. What this guy can do on the golf course is unbelievable. Even what he can do when he's just screwing around with that ball but the reason that was so cool when he did that, picked up that ball and did that, was because he was a good husband. No, that's not
just
it.
a good ball player.
Yeah,
that's it.
He's a good golfer. And that's
but what it is, what Brit Hume is asking is, he's saying, okay, very successful person, you violated what I personally, Brit Hume, think are the laws, natural laws of society.
Right.
And I want you to bow and scrape and get on your back and ask for forgiveness in my religion.
Yeah.
Because
this is the only place that you can get that.
That's crazy
Of course, it's crazy. And he said Jesus Christ offers Tiger I think he said the security he needs, and that might not be right because
Tiger has enough money, even with the 50% he's still going to have. He doesn't need Jesus' help or anybody else.
By the way, and I may have just for disclosure, I can't read my own writing, but here's the thing: society, we can provide Tiger what he needs. We can't provide him anything. His friends can. His family can. He can't. Or
we're just the people he's trying to avoid when he goes out to dinner or drink or not sign an autograph.
That's exactly it. And Bill O'Reilly, the first question he asked Brit Hume, was this proselytizing? And Brit Hume said no, he doesn't think so.
But then he starts proselytizing.
Well, then he starts proselytizing. Now, if this isn't proselytizing, what is it? Yes, it's not passing a bucket and saying that if you come to the stage and I touch you, you're going to be healed and all of that, and this is the only way that will happen. But, I mean, it is proselytization light, and Brit Hume has no place doing that. Of course he can, and he has the avenue because he has Fox News, and he has Bill O'Reilly sort of goading him into doing it. And so I don't begrudge him that. He believes this. But to say that he's not proselytizing is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And plus, I always have a real problem with people who think, and are you an atheist?
Yeah, I'm pretty atheistic.
I'm fairly atheist. I mean, I grew up Catholic.
I'm very curious.
Vanished
but
after years. But at the same time, it's like, okay, let's give you what you want, Republican right? Let's say there's an all-powerful supreme being who knows everything, created the earth, whatever. Do you really think he gives a damn about your sex life?
No.
Really?
No.
Really?
And if he really did do that, he'd be so busy. It's like Santa Claus can't make toys for all the kids. He just can't make toys for all the kids. So that's why there's the myth of Santa Claus. Well, the myth of God
just
is,
in case my 6-year-old is watching right
now.
The
myth of Santa Claus it's only in Poland though. That's the only place it's a myth.
It's real
That's why they
everywhere
cut
else.
out the Polish kids. They don't get toys. But the myth of God is the same thing. I mean, the fact that when would he sleep? I mean, right now,
he wouldn't need to sleep because he's a supreme being.
The big question Australia, people are sleeping, and he's got to take care of the people that are. I mean, in any case, I understand why people have religion. There are times in my life where I am envious of people who do have religion, frankly, but I don't need a former anchorman who actually was good at his job and You know, it's so ironic because I used to think he was a good anchorman, but it's because I thought he screwed around on his wife, and now that I know he obviously doesn't, then I don't know.
You don't know what Britt Hume does.
Exactly.
Dude, for all you know,
that's
Britt Hume
exactly
wears
what I'm
like
saying.
knickers.
That's
in
exactly
the
what I'm
bedroom
saying. Nice knickers used, by the way.
know.
But the point I'm making is, and the point you're making, is that we don't need somebody telling Tiger Woods that. He doesn't need that.
Tiger Woods is a grown man.
Yeah.
He's in charge of his own life.
The thing that really irks me the most is the people that actually had this expectation of Tiger Woods. He didn't promise us to be anything except a golfer. You invented the fact that he lived this fairy tale life as a happy
they're
man.
the same people who pretended to be so upset because Bill Clinton cheated on his wife.
Yeah.
It's none of anybody
Well, they
else's
certainly are the
business.
same people, and there are religious. There's a religious faction to that. And again, I respect people who are religious, but who don't try and shove it down your throat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is about as shoving it down your throat from someone who, is otherwise, other than his opinions, a respectable, seemingly good person. But I can't get over the fact that he continued. I mean, he was given another forum, and he kind of just made it worse.
He just did the same thing.
He kept doing the same thing.
I can't say he was a good anchorman, though.
Well,
he's disingenuous.
Well, I mean, he's disingenuous and he's conservative. I always thought he was a good reporter. I always thought he asked good questions. When he was on ABC and he subbed for Ted Koppel very frequently on Nightline, I used to think he was actually very good. So he was a good interviewer.
I mean, I didn't hear Britt Hume calling out Dick Cheney for torturing people, which, in my opinion, is a far worse offense.
If Dick Cheney just came to Jesus,
in the Jesus mind,
of course, that's exactly
laid.
right. That's exactly right, and that's something you expect of a vice president. You don't expect anything of a golfer. You did not elect this golfer, but you expect a vice president to act responsibly, certainly in his role as vice president. And he didn't, and Britt Hume didn't think that he needed to find Jesus.
Yeah,
but he already found him.
The Christian right wing in this country is into torturing
people. Here's the logic there is that Dick Cheney could get away with that because he's already found Jesus and he'll be redeemed because of it. He'll be forgiven for that sin. Anyway, again, this is not a big story other than I think it brings to light a division, and I think it's in a small part of America, and I think a very small number of Americans know who Britt Hume is. Certainly a smaller number than know who Tiger Woods is. And so I don't think that this has a grand effect on things. However, I do think that it's something we have to be aware of, and it brings to light this Christian hypocrisy that happens in this country constantly. And there it was, for all to see.
Do you feel better now?
No, I don't because I'm coughing, but yes, I feel better. Are you done with Tiger?
Look, I'm done with Tiger. It's just my wife is always interested in the Tiger Woods story or the John Edwards story or anything like that because it's always like, here's somebody who crossed the line.
Right.
It's like Tiger Woods is an individual. He's done what he's going to do in life,
right.
and
by the way,
it's his choice, man.
Britt
And you know what? Everyone's like, oh, he's lost his kids. Dude, he's going to see his kids.
Of course he's going to see his kids.
His kids are still going to love him
They
when
don't
they're
even
older.
understand what's going on.
Life will go on.
They're going to be Tiger Woods' kids.
Yeah,
That's
and
gonna
Tiger's
be cool
going to have
no matter what.
He's got a pretty good couple of years ahead of him.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, that when you talk about, you were just saying that your wife, if you put 10 men in a room and said to each of them, do you think Tiger Woods screws around with his wife? Britt Hume's the only one.
Without their wives there.
Without their wives there. Britt Hume's the only one who says, no, I don't think so.
Of course he is. He's a professional athlete.
Yeah, I knew some professional athletes. They played in the NHL. I know there's some people here who would argue whether or not that's professional sport.
Dude, that's absolutely a professional sport.
Thank you very much, Wes. And even JR agrees, but Jenk and Ben wouldn't.
Jenk didn't believe
hockey is a sport.
Are you kidding me?
No. I mean, I'm not kidding.
What's the matter with him?
Yeah, he needs to come to Jesus.
He
can be redeemed for thinking that.
All right.
In any case, these were people whose names were not known to anyone. Still, if you go to an avid hockey player and I tell you a couple of their names, they would say, never heard of that guy. Yet, I've never seen guys get more girls than these professional athletes. And they were nobody. So, of course Tiger Woods is getting it. I mean,
non-stop.
Yeah. And he's foolish in some regard for being so blatant about it, but you don't know because you're Tiger Woods and you think the world revolves around you.
It's unbelievable how blatant he was about it.
Yeah. But to think that that your image of this man, all he was the best golfer who ever lived, and that's all he will continue to be, and he will go out there and he will win tournaments, and people will talk about this forever, but come on. ridiculous. Brit Hume, get off of it. Get off of it. We're going to come back. We have guests. We have stuff. We have talked about Michael Steele, U.S. Senator Byron Dorgan, a Democrat, retiring, announcing his retirement today from North Dakota, from the Senate. I would say North Dakota, a tough place to elect a Democrat, right?
I'd say it's a pretty tough place.
So that's a big loss for the Democrats. We'll talk about politics. We might even take some of your calls. Is that a true rumor?
I'd be into that. I didn't bring that up with anybody.
You didn't bring that up with anyone. This is what I said to Wes when I last spoke to him today. Oh, that's a good idea, Wes. Just tell Dave and JR.
Why do we need to tell Dave and JR? They just put the number up and then people answer the calls.
There's stuff that has to happen. There's stuff that happens.
Like what?
There's stuff that happens. Just come to Jesus. Come to Jesus, Wes. It's the Young Turks. I'm Michael Shore. Wes Clark will be back after this. Second show of 2010, which is why I haven't really remembered to put my mic on. This is the second show of 2010. Happy New Year to all of you who are turning in for the first time. Michael Shore with Wes Clark. Cenk Uygur will be back tomorrow, and Wesley, we are talking a little bit about off the air. We were talking a little bit earlier about the Central Intelligence Agency. I mean, everybody's talking about the CIA right now, both for the tragedy that happened in Afghanistan, and also because of the lack of, as the president said today, connecting the dots as it refers to the underpants bomber, the attempted, sabotaging of a Delta Northwest plane on Christmas Day by a Nigerian national. And what the president is saying by not connecting the dots is that we had the intelligence, we didn't have the network to share that intelligence. And frankly, that to me is a legitimate but inexcusable excuse. I mean, it sounds like that is probably what happened. It's what always seems to happen.
8 years after 9/11.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
what makes it more inexcusable is the guy's father goes to the embassy to tell this. I mean, there's so many things that they drop the ball on. It's unbelievable.
And yesterday on this show, Richard Eskow was saying, well, we can't be expected just because there's a piece of information to go over every single piece of information.
Yes, you can,
well, that's the thing.
Yes,
I think, and I said that to him yesterday, not as forcefully as you did, but yes, you can. I mean, you should be able to. You should be able to have the infrastructure there.
Let's not also forget, this is the same CIA that was totally surprised by Pakistan detonating a nuclear device in the 90s, and India doing the same thing, and had no idea. None.
And faulting one agency, and people fault the CIA a lot, but we have in place now a head of Central Intelligence whose mission was, and granted he's only been there for not even a year, was to sort of be almost a bureaucrat, which is what Leon Panetta is, and oversee a communication, a new sort of culture there that did not sort of have this hubris about their own agencies, that was able to share with each other, and that was what his role was going to be. And of course, that didn't happen as it pertains to this case.
Dude, the problems with American intelligence, it's more than just the bureaucracy. It's even who's recruited. I mean, think about it this way. If you're to join the CIA, you've got to be someone who's never done drugs, never had a homosexual experience, never lived in a communist country, never, ever ventured outside really white bread America, middle class upbringing. Well, they don't know what they're doing working with the underground or working with, how the real world functions. I'll tell you. I'll give you an example that I actually dealt with the CIA.
But let me. First of all, I applied to be in the CIA when I was at the University of Virginia when I was a senior, and I went through the process. And Wes is right, although they don't tell you as much because they ask you questions, you answer them honestly because you feel like they know the answers already, and then they tell you that you are not accepted. In my case, I didn't get the job. But the point, and you never know why. But in defense of Central Intelligence, and this has to be a frustrating thing, and as in all the books I've read about it, and all the people I've listened to talk about it, it is a job in which you cannot share your victories, but your losses are. It's like the Secret Service. The losses are magnified for the world to see. Every single time that a couple that tried to get into a White House event didn't get into a White House event, we don't hear about it. We hear about it when they get in. And that is a funny way to exist. It is a clandestine, by definition, way of existing. So there are probably things that Central Intelligence does do well that we don't know anything about. But when we see things like this, it becomes inexcusable.
Look.
Well, I would say that they definitely
can't have an effective intelligence service on the kind of secret level in a country that is not a dictatorship. Because you're not going to have people growing up learning how to beat the system and game the system paranoid enough to really be able to function in that environment. But I'll give you an example. When I was, years ago, I was doing a movie in the Balkans. And I get a phone call from...
Something I've never been able to say.
Yeah.
That sentence.
And it didn't come together either. But I get a phone call from the American ambassador there. I got to drive down to Sarajevo through... It's a pretty hairy drive going from Split, all the way through Herzegovina and down there. And
Plus, they're doing that construction right around Zagreb.
And it was literally like 2 or 3 months after the war in Kosovo. So it wasn't like that comfortable for me to go down to Sarajevo. But at the same time, I get down there and goes, look, we think you're part of a blackmail scheme that the Bosnian government's trying to blackmail you, and everyone thinks you're a CIA agent here, and he was getting this report, of course, from the CIA. He was telling them what they're hearing there, and we think it's a government setup. And what it was the director that I'd fired from the movie went around and was trying to have me killed for getting fired. It had nothing to do with a government, Bosnian or even Serbian, anything.
Right.
But they can't see that because they're looking at stuff from a state point of view, not a personal point of view. And most crime and most underworld things that happen in the world are not done by state actors or towards a strategic goal of a state. It's a personal goal of I want more money, or this guy is my rival, or I have to, control this little bit of turf. It's not like everything is not the KGB and it's not the 1960s and 70s.
Yes,
and the CIA hasn't quite adapted to that yet.
Well, that's
or
the
the
thing.
fact
And that's what Panetta was.
Do we need a secret intelligence agency?
Well,
why do we have to hide all the information? Why can't we be out in the open?
Because in order to get that information, we have to be hidden in a way, in many cases. Well,
because everybody in the world knows, look, if you write something on the computer or say it on a phone, the CIA can get it.
Yeah.
No question. The only way they can't is if you write it by hand and give it to somebody or say it to somebody. Otherwise, they can capture that transmission.
Well, I agree with your first sort of your thesis that that we have to change the culture, and it is a 1960s culture. Insofar as I know about it, that seems to be true, and that is what the president said when he made Leon Panetta chairman. Because Leon Panetta had no intelligence experience. There's a tremendous amount of intelligence, but not a lot of experience in the intelligence community. Yet, and so a lot of people were sort of bristled at this Washington bureaucrat being brought in to run the intelligence agency. The reason he was brought in was to change the way the business was done there.
Dude, everybody who works in the Army or intelligence or anything else, they're like, oh, bring in a bureaucrat. Except for your first 2 or 3 years in the service, in where you're in a line and in an operational unit, you spend the rest of your life as a bureaucrat. Yeah. So that bureaucrat argument just drives me crazy, because anybody who knows what they're doing, who's been in more than 3 or 4 years, is technically a bureaucrat.
Well, I think that as a White House chief of staff and as a congressional committee chairperson, Leon Panetta had the kind of civilian experience that may have applied to the CIA, that may have applied to the kind of structural changes they needed there. I don't think it was a bad choice. I understand why people within that community didn't like the choice, because it was not someone of them. But and listen, your point, you have experience with the military that I can't pretend to have. But from the outside, the idea of someone like Panetta coming in there to kind of say, all right, listen, I was in a White House where we needed the West Wing and the East Wing to talk. We needed to get Congress to come to the Hill. We needed a Republican Senate to work with a Democratic president, et cetera, et cetera. We can maybe fix communication with, because communication between the intelligence communities, but the FBI and the CIA, whether or not they should or shouldn't exist is not what I'm talking about here, but that was a problem, for sure, a major problem, and a lot of people thought the biggest problem that in the prevention of what happened on September 11th. So I understand.
Well, apparently it's still a big problem.
Well, it's still a big problem. Absolutely, it's still a big problem. And nobody said that Leon Panetta's Leon Panetta's coming in, we're going to be cured now. 8 years go by, we're all fixed. I mean, we have, there is, but we also don't know if the problem has been lessened. We don't know how well they're doing in other regards, because, as you said, it is a secretive community. I just don't see how intelligence can be gathered, and that's a layperson's read on it, without it being a secretive community, though. I mean, there has to be something. Because, I mean, part of
they do in the CIA? Do you know what they do in the CIA?
They try and get secrets.
They try and read every magazine and periodical that comes out in a country. They try and understand who the political actors are in the country. you don't have that many spies on the ground. And the ones they get aren't like the CIA got them or they developed it. It's 9 times out of 10, it's somebody who walks in the front door of the embassy. That's the way it was throughout the Cold War. Right, but that's the way it is now.
But there is a recruitment to it, and there. And listen, the problems that you're saying that exist within the Central Intelligence community are there. You're right. I mean, there has to be some level of clandestine intelligence gathering.
We're fucking democracy,
because you can't,
man.
We are a democracy, but I think
Why do we have
our
to have
democracy.
secrets?
But because the secrets. If they are not secret, they will threaten the democracy.
Why is it not? Why, if the CIA finds, like, you know, Abdullah whomever is going to blow up a bomb, why wouldn't they say, okay, here's a picture of the guy. Here, everybody, this guy wants to blow up a bomb.
But
or they could go, don't tell anybody, don't let anybody know this is the guy who wants to do it.
Wes, you're right about that. But the point is, the getting of the information to find out that Abdullah, whomever, as you say, is going to blow up.
They don't have to say how they got the information.
Well, that's secret then. I mean, that's making my argument. But I mean, if they don't have to say it, that there has to be some secret operation to get that information that.
How about this? We know he's a terrorist because one of his relatives came in and told us he's a terrorist.
Well, I mean, that would be something that we should really have entertained. You're absolutely right. But I'm saying there has to be.
And then go beyond that. And what is this security apparatus doing? What are our national security goals at this point?
Well,
what are they?
Defining those, that's a great point.
What have they been really since the end of the Cold War? We've got this huge army that we're paying for. We're all over the world. We're just pissing everybody off.
Well, they were redefined.
And what? Towards what?
They were redefined.
What are we getting out of it?
They were redefined for us by the zealots in the last administration.
Look, the garbage about democracy, whatever. Democracy doesn't necessarily advance America's interests.
Well, forgetting democracy for a moment, national security. I mean, just security. We just don't want to get hurt, right? So if our goal is protecting the country, the protection of this country was redefined, and now we're trying to figure out if that definition. It still seems a nebulous definition to me. Unless
you control the borders of the country, it doesn't matter how many soldiers we send to how many other countries.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm talking about, you said what is the goal here?
What's the goal?
What's the goal? That is something that needs to be defined. And forgetting the methods of getting that goal, doing the borders, having an army, having a check every time you step into an airplane. Somebody I heard on the radio today said what they should do is they should have everybody get a physical before they get on an airplane, and that way your healthcare costs will go down too. So everybody gets a physical, they can see what's inside of it.
Everything they're doing to slow down and annoy us on this will all be useless when they start doing with the bomb-making materials what they do with drugs, which is swallow it in a condom in their stomach, put the injector right through there, or, however.
Well, they're always going to be trying to find ways, as we have proven, whether it's shoes or underpants, it's been proven they're always going to continue to find ways of trying to skirt the system. We have to be one step ahead of it. And I don't think that we should be criticizing our president.
We should be flying naked and unconscious with no baggage.
That sounds fun, too. But I think that the point is that we should not be, I don't think, coming after our president, as some are doing, for being reactionary. I mean, I just think that the nature, listen, the president that these Republicans who are now all over our president for, their president that they defended for reacting, this is a reactionary type of event. When things happen, you do react to them, and we have to react to them, and perhaps we reacted to them well last time. I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't know. But the major stuff has not happened. And I have always said that if it happened under Bill Clinton and then nobody was bombed again for 8 years, I would have said, well, Bill Clinton did a pretty good job keeping us safe. His government did a pretty good job, his administration. But the point that you're making is about the CIA. What has to happen at the CIA is, I want to hear what you think has to happen at the CIA. Would you just eradicate the CIA?
No, you wouldn't eradicate the CIA, but you got to change what its mission is, what its focus is. Look, you've got this whole big confluence of force and force projection, which is shared now by both the military and the CIA with Blackwater private contractors over there. And then you've got the State Department, which used to be in charge of foreign policy, which basically is underneath the Pentagon now for foreign policy.
By the way, the unindictable Blackwater.
It's just put it out in the open. recruit people who actually know a little bit
Okay, so
about
paint a
the
picture
wrong
of
side
what
of
that
the
would be
tracks.
like. Let's say, okay, there is Jim Smith is a man living in Yemen who is going to blow up a plane. Okay.
Okay.
Tell me, in Wes Clark's world.
We know Jim.
How do
we
we
know
how do
Jim
we
is in
how do we
Yemen, and
find
we know he's going to blow up a plane.
How do we find out that Jim is in Yemen and he's going to blow up a plane? And then what do we do once we know Jim's there?
Once we know Jim's there, we contact the Yemeni authorities and have them pick him up.
And what if they're telling us about 1,000 Jim Smiths in Yemen and 14 Jim Smiths in Somalia and 77 in Nigeria?
Do
and
they?
27?
Can they tell us where the thousand? Like the Yemeni government says, there's 1,000 Jim Smiths here.
Yeah, I mean that's
And
what
I'm
saying.
like, okay, 1,000. Are they in one place?
But
Because if they're in one place, bomb it.
Okay, but I'm just saying they're not in one place. It's like in New York City, there are 100 people that want to blow up the Empire State Building.
Okay, but
All
this
right.
guy, this Jim Smith, what makes this Jim Smith different from all the other Jim Smiths that we need to go pick him up?
Well, something makes it different, and that's the intelligence that we've gathered on that Jim Smith.
And how do we know that intelligence makes it different
Well,
than every other Jim
we
Smith?
find out through some of our operatives on the ground there that this Jim Smith, bought a cigarette lighter today and a fuse, and he's going to blow something up. I mean, I'm obviously speaking hypothetically. We found that out through our intelligence. The moment we wouldn't have found it
and then
out
the
if
other
we
question
weren't
is,
paying people
and
off
did
on the
we
street
sell him
and
the
doing
fuse?
it secretly.
Did we sell him
We
the
didn't
fuse?
sell him. He bought the fuse down the block, and our guy who we're paying, who owns the little fuse shop down the block, is telling us as soon as they
And
get
do we
there.
know if the guy who owns the fuse shop is sleeping with Jim Smith's wife and just wants Jim Smith out of the picture?
We have no idea.
Because that's the thing. You don't know what anybody's telling you.
Well, you don't know what it's anything, but you have to go on good hunches, which is what good intelligence community does.
Here's what my advice would be.
Yeah.
Why don't we get the fuck out of the rest of the world and stay in the United States, and people aren't going to be coming over here to blow us up? Why is that so hard for people to understand?
Because it's not possible anymore. I mean,
Why is it not possible?
It's a theoretical because it just isn't. I mean, the way
Why?
Because the
It's
way
like whenever I
because of
hear-
globalization
whenever I hear
because
people-
of globalization and the community that we have. So you're saying in actuality, just bring everybody home. Bring
Why
all
not?
Of our, close
what
our
the
embassies.
Fuck, what are we in
close
Korea?
our embassies.
No, I'm not saying close our embassies.
Well,
what
okay,
are we
but that's
what are
part
we
of
in
it.
Korea for? Why are we in South
But
Korea?
you can make arguments about all of them.
You're
because
right,
We're there
because we
the
don't
South,
really need
because
to
the
be in
South
there.
Koreans want us there because they're our
Dude,
allies because
the
they
South-
want us.
let me tell
They
you
have North
something.
Korea. They're big enemies to the
We're
north.
there because it evolved that way, and it's a situation that we haven't taken charge of or steered in any direction. We were there really in the 60s and 70s to prevent the South Koreans from going north.
There is a history.
Then in the
to- right.
90s, the excuse became,
To
oh,
prevent
we
the
need to
North from-
protect.
right.
Dude, we don't need to protect South Korea. The ROK are badasses. They don't need our help.
The ROK might be badasses, but
Put one guy there with a cell phone. He can call us when the North Koreans attack.
But it's easier
that's
to
all
have the
30,000
North Koreans.
soldiers is
It's
gonna be.
easier to have the North Koreans not attacking because we're there. This is a whole theoretical different argument. The point is we're trying to address Central Intelligence, which is what you
They're
want to talk
all related.
about. Well, they are related.
Don't you understand?
They are, of
all
course,
related.
they're all related. But they're
You can have the smartest
but
CIA in
you're
the world, and
speaking
you're like,
specifically
okay,
because
all right. If I tell the CIA, look, we're going to go into a Muslim part of the world,
Yeah.
and we're just going to smash their minarets down, and we're going to show them who's boss. And you, the CIA, have to make sure they like us afterwards. You know what the CIA will say? Oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's more or less what they told the Bush administration about Iraq
Yeah.
when they went into Iraq. But they can't do anything. It's all subservient to the political, will.
Right.
And in this country, we've been rudderless since the end of the Cold War as to what is the purpose of this giant army and navy. It's obviously not just enforcing free trade in the shipping lanes, because we don't seem to give a damn about the pirates in Somalia.
Well, right.
Or in the Malacca
there's
Straits
more
or
to it.
anywhere
I don't
else.
think that anybody is saying that the only reason is to support free trade. In any case, we're not going to solve these problems. We're probably not going to get the army to move out of South Korea today. But I mean, it's an interesting.
It's big money, dude. We pay big money. What do we get out of it?
Well, we don't know. We don't know what we get out of it. We know what we don't get out of it, and that is the involvement in a conflict, hypothetically, between North and South Korea. I mean, our exit would facilitate the entrance of North Korea into South
Do
Korea.
you honestly,
then,
do you really believe if we pulled out of South Korea, North Korea would attack?
I honestly don't believe we're going to pull out of South Korea.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
It's not on
So
the table. But why the hell not?
I think that it might.
Why are
I
we
think
in all
they
these
might.
places?
I think that there is a higher likelihood that they would. I think that listen, we've defined our role in the world in some ways, whether you agree with it or not. the world functions in that way right now. Maybe that definition will change, but
we can redefine that.
Well, let's, yes, we could redefine that, and maybe we'll do that on a
different
show or in a different hour.
Those are the big issues to talk about, is why the hell are we all over the world?
I have one more issue to talk about, and we're going to talk about it in just a minute, and that's Joe Lieberman. So we're going to have to move on. It's talking about getting somebody out of some place.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get Joe Lieberman out of the
It's not going to happen.
Michael Schur and Wes Clark,
like
we'll be back on the Young Turks in just a moment.
That's right, that's where we headed. The #1 progressive talk show, don't you forget it. That's right, politics.
Don't you forget it. Michael Schur here on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur will be back tomorrow. I'm joined today by Wes Clark Jr. We are discussing everything that's happening as it pertains to terrorism, healthcare, Joe Lieberman, and we have a guest later in the hour.
Tiger Woods.
Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, we're not going to cover anymore. Britt Hume told him he could come to Jesus, and Tiger said, I don't know what Tiger said, but I'm sure he is laughing somewhere wherever Tiger is now hiding. But a couple of, one interesting, and this is only interesting to people who care as much about politics as I do, headline is that Senator Byron Dorgan, Democrat of North Dakota, is retiring. It's not an exciting story. You can't tell an exciting story about Byron Dorgan. However, Wes, it will be another interesting race, or an interesting part of the race for Congress in 2010.
My guess is it will not be a Democrat elected from North Dakota.
No, I think you will have a Republican senator from North Dakota, which makes winning a seat like Chris Dodd's all the more important, and that seems to be virtually, at this point, unwinnable. But again, there's a lot of time between now and next November. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of the inauguration of our president, and some of the problems that we are seeing are problems that happened before the election, problems with within the intelligence community, connecting dots, as the president said today, that we had a lot of information, we didn't connect the dots. And as we talked about, it's inexcusable not to connect some of these dots, and he was charged with trying to do that. And I still have the confidence that he is trying to do it. I mean, we heard John Brennan on the Sunday shows this week, the Deputy Secretary of, or Deputy National Security Advisor for Homeland Security, talking about how there is a seriousness about this administration towards dealing with terrorism, that anybody who is criticizing this president for that is wrongheaded. Now,
would you want me to criticize him? I'm not going to criticize him.
No, I don't want you to criticize him.
But honestly, I think Janet Napolitano should be fired.
Because of what happened on Christmas Day?
Yeah, because of what happened on Christmas Day, and she went on the next day saying it wasn't my fault, and then she came back later and goes, "Oh yeah, I guess it kind of was my fault."
It kind of was our fault. Well, but the problem is we in America are so accustomed to, we're losing games, let's fire the coach. Jeff Fisher, and this is going off book a little bit here, the coach of the Tennessee Titans.
Do you know who would be better at running Homeland Security than Janet Napolitano?
Jeff Fisher?
No, whoever's right below her, like the actual civil servant
but the
who's
point,
been working
I'm
in it
saying
their
is
whole fucking life.
That we get satisfaction about over saying these things, and firing people and seeing heads roll. But the point is, it would be better to have Janet Napolitano, who's charged with Homeland Security, do Homeland Security. And I agree with you. She did recant her statements the very next day. They were sort of unbecoming when she said them initially, but I do think that when you have people, simply firing people is not a way of running a government.
What should you do? Execute them?
No, but you shouldn't execute them. You should
say,
execute policy.
Okay. No,
you should execute policy. You should execute policy, and you should have Obama say to her, that was ridiculous what you said, but how did this happen? Let's fix it. Something is broken. Let's fix it. And I think that's a lot of what we heard. We're going to open up the phone lines, actually, to you, 323-866-8201, 323-866-8201. We will talk about anything having to do with this. I want, JR, if we could...
Really, we'll talk about anything.
Well, we'll talk about anything, but we'll talk about most especially the terrorism and healthcare. And I want to listen to Michael Steele, our whole world as Democrats is always defined by Michael Steele, the head of the Republican National Committee, and we have a lot of fun with him. Dick Cheney criticized the Obama administration about not being serious about terrorism, which, as I said, John Brennan defended. This is clip number 4, JR. This is Michael Steele defending former Vice President Cheney.
One of the biggest critics of the president is former Vice President Dick Cheney, and he has suggested the president is, quote, trying to pretend that we are not at war with terrorists, and because of that, he is making us less safe. But the New York Times reports that at least a dozen former top Bush officials involved in counterterrorism say, as far as they're concerned, they pretty much agree with Obama's policy. So is Cheney actually hurting the Republicans more than helping them when he makes these statements?
I think the vice president has made it very clear, and I think he's been very consistent and correct in saying that the inconsistency in the Obama administration's approach to foreign policy, particularly with respect to terrorism, is a concern.
But if you can't call a thing what it is, does that mean you're not concerned about terrorism?
That's the point. If you can't call a thing what it is, then there's a question about what do you think it is. You can't look at this as an intervention. You can't look at this as dealing with criminals as you would the guy who robbed the 7-Eleven, when you're trying to hijack a plane or bomb a plane or something like that.
But is it a matter of semantics, Mr. Steele? He says it's a war on Al-Qaeda, war on terrorism. Terrorism is a tactic, and that's why he doesn't use that word.
I think the American people know full well what this is. They view it as a war against terrorism. They view a terrorist as a terrorist, not as a criminal who is subject to the same constitutional privileges and rights that you and I are. You've got to be kidding me.
Well, it's funny. The whole way that the Republicans seem to be running their criticism of the president on national security is the way it's almost like they got convinced by our criticism of President Bush. The Republicans always felt that the Democrats were rooting for the terrorists and against the United States. So now they think that somehow, because of that we've elected a president who somehow sits in the Oval Office hoping that terrorism wins.
Yeah, and by the way, for any Republicans that may be watching, maybe there's a couple, it's not that we're like love terrorists. We just think you shouldn't kill, lock up, and torture innocent people. Yeah. Like that doesn't sound like that radical an idea.
Right. The whole idea that we're protecting our country against terrorism, it's similar, and it's in a way to their burning the flag issue, that you shouldn't burn the flag. I mean, they're saying you shouldn't burn the flag because it's our symbol of liberty and it's everything we do. Well, yes, terrorism against the United States is a terrible and inexcusable crime. But we are protecting the United States here, and part of the United States is due process, and part of the United States is a fair trial, and part of the United States is to not be tortured, no matter how heinous your act is. To argue over the semantics of terrorism, you hear Steele there, who, God bless him. I love that he's out there, because I know whenever he speaks, Republicans are on eggshells because they think he's going to screw something up. But he's talking about how the vice president is right, and all they're talking about is the way that we are addressing this administration is addressing terrorism.
It's important for people to understand that a lot of the people that were down on Guantanamo Bay and held overseas and everything else are innocent. Yeah. They're just random people that were grabbed because either a neighbor wanted their property or somebody didn't like them. It doesn't mean that they were terrorists, that they were grabbed. And these people have been locked up, and many of them tortured.
And there are mistakes made. People. I mean, we released George Bush and his presidency, his administration released people from Guantanamo into Yemen. I mean, there are mistakes, there's imperfections, but there's also a mistake in locking somebody up who doesn't deserve to be there. We're taking calls at 323-866-8201. We have a caller on the line. JR, who's with us?
We got John in Indianapolis.
John in Indianapolis, the formerly undefeated city. John, how are you?
Hi. I employ 150 people. I fired somebody today. And what I said to them was, if I got to do your job for you, I don't need you. You can leave now. Napolitano should be terminated immediately.
Okay.
This guy is glowing in the dark, and he gets on an airplane.
No.
This should not be tolerated, period.
John, I hear your passion. I have a question for you. What is the remedy for Napolitano? What would you do then? What would change? I mean, isn't it about changing?
I think it's pretty obvious.
No. But if you terminate, let me finish. If you terminate Janet Napolitano, who is the Secretary of Homeland Security, if you terminate Janet Napolitano in that job, and it's a job that I frankly found her to be a curious nominee for in the first place. If you terminate her, you have to have a backup plan. I'm sure when you fired that guy, you're one of your 150 people today, you had a backup plan for that.
You know what? He was an electrician for me. I had known nothing about electricians. You know that?
But
he didn't do the job.
Right.
I could care less. I'm going to hire somebody that is a security expert. Don't tell me the dirty details. I expect the job to be done. I hire all kinds of professionals, sir. I hire electricians. I hire plumbers that work in my building. Do I know anything about those particular endeavors? No. I pay for that service. If they don't perform, I fire them.
And John,
This woman is hired to be in charge of the protection of this country. She failed. Terminate this person. Bring somebody else that their expertise is in that area.
John, was this the first infraction by that electrician, or has this been?
Yes. I don't pay somebody $15,000 to do a job and it doesn't get done. They will be terminated.
Okay, but do you hear at all what I'm saying in that we live in a country where a lot of the culture, and this is one case.
Yeah, but she didn't do
the
job.
No, but listen
man.
to me. That we live in a country where the culture is, if it's not working, it's like the change the channel culture. You know, you're watching TV and you're surfing channels. Something comes on, you don't like it, you move to the next channel. Somebody does one thing wrong, and this is a completely egregious thing, and I'm not blaming Napolitano for it. Listen, let me finish. I'm talking culturally. I'm not talking about this incident. That culturally, we live in a country where everybody just calls for somebody's head as if that is going to give some satisfaction to the problem.
Okay, maybe everybody calls for it, but they don't fire them. Let John
answer.
In the real world, people get fired.
Let John answer that. Let John answer that.
If you go to a dentist,
right,
you might not know nothing about fixing your own teeth. You pay for a service. If the service is not done properly, you terminate that person. We're hire people, and look, President Obama, he needs to hire people that are competent and to not reward incompetence. This was completely incompetent. This person needs to be replaced with somebody that will perform better. This guy's glowing in the dark. His dad called. He's on the watch list, and they let him on a damn airplane.
Well, John, your passion is appreciated, and your opinion is shared by a lot of people. And thanks for calling. Thanks for participating on the show. Really appreciate the call. I mean,
look, here's the thing. Here's the thing about Napolitano or anybody else. If you're going to take a professional politician, that's not their skill set is not running an intelligence organization.
Well,
their skill set is how to get by with half-truths and kind of make everybody feel good so they don't really pay attention and you get reelected.
I don't, that's true. To talk about the Homeland Security to me is a big bureaucracy.
You're right. So why not have a fucking bureaucrat in charge of it?
Well, I think that we have to. I think it's not a question of whether or not we have a bureaucrat in charge. I mean, we have a bureaucrat. We have a former governor. I mean, is there a bigger bureaucrat?
No, it's not a bureaucrat. That's a politician.
But she's somebody who's run state agencies. I mean, this is somebody who's
civil servant.
Okay, I think we need to talk a little bit about the validity of the Homeland Security Department, though, and putting the blame on them. I don't know that anybody, or John even, would be as irate over Janet Napolitano had she not been so foolish as to come out and say that it's not her fault, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't have him to answer that question. I just think that I'm really talking about the culture of somebody's head's got to, come off, and that doesn't address the problem, rather than saying, all right, Napolitano screwed up, but we have to figure out how this doesn't happen again.
Okay.
It is not. It is a Band-Aid. It is a Band-Aid.
Figure it out. The second in charge over there.
Well, of course, the people, all the deputies, but they never get to be the head of the agency.
Maybe they should be.
Maybe they should be. We are going to be back with more of your calls, 323-866-8201. You are listening to the Young Turks.